station. KAKU 88.5 FM Kahului, Maui, the voice of Maui.
Good morning. Aloha. It's Monday at 11, so it is the Neutral Zone. I'm Jason Schwartz, your host. The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank No Ka'oi Motors Maui Car Rentals for their support. Located at 181 Dairy Road across from the fire station in Kahului, they've served the Maui community for more than 30 years with services in used cars and automobile rentals. Find them online at mauicarrentals.net or at 877-3300. The Neutral Zone is heard Mondays live at 11 a.m. and again on Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM. Good morning, everyone. How are you? We are just starting our show, and our guest is snuggling into his seat.
Quite literally walking in the door.
Perfect timing.
Wow.
I have a guest with us that many of you know, I hope, by heart. Sam Small is the host, director, producer, chief cook, bottle washer for Maui Causes, and he's also a major advocate for the people of Maui.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome to our show, Sam.
I am so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. You know, you're so busy. You have enough volume? It should be over there, maybe crackle.
Which one?
It should be this one.
Ooh.
Is it? Looks like it's on. If it's not, we'll switch.
I just needed more gain.
Uh-huh.
Hello. Oh, now we are in Radio Land.
We're in Radio Land.
Wow,
You know,
that's fast.
You're a TV guy, but Radio Land is
I
fun.
started in radio, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, sure. That's what I was avoiding all my college classes by being in the campus radio station. And so I ended up in speech communications, because they gave me college credit for the time that I was spending at the campus radio station.
Oh, that's a good thing.
And so it was just a perfect vehicle for me.
What did you do? Did you do music or talk, or what were you doing then?
We did music, yeah. I was a DJ. I was actually programming music in the cafeteria in my high school.
Wow.
It started way early in media. Our vice principal didn't know how to control the morning announcement system, and so he asked me to run the morning announcements for him. I was his engineer.
In high school.
I was a geek. A hardware geek. I was the projector guy. I gave the slideshows.
Oh.
When in class, if there was a movie to play, I was the guy who came into the projector and played the movies.
Wow. So you got credit for high school and college? No, I'm fooling.
So I started at this stuff, at a young age, and I was inspired by my grandfather. My grandfather was part of the socialist movement in New York City with the triangle, shirtwaist fire and the International Women's Garment Workers Union. And so he was a part of that whole socialist movement and a community really, looking to establish real benefits, ongoing benefits for people, the citizens.
Right.
And as a really, coming out of the whole trust mentality and the antitrust mentality of when Rockefeller and Weyerhaeuser and the cotton industry had taken over the nation.
Oh boy.
And we're still feeling the results of that today. That's when they took hemp out of the mix. They took hemp out of our lives.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather was part of the community activism to, protect the people from these, exploitative trust type. They had too much control.
Well, you have followed in his footsteps.
I was inspired. It's looking back. I sitting and talking with my mom, explaining to my mom why I do all this stuff. Before she passed, we had long conversations about why. She totally understood why I do Maui Causes and why we would put so much energy into. Looking for solutions to heal the system, fix the system.
Well, you are a champion. I mean, I know that here in Maui, you say the hard stuff. You say the stuff that someone's doing something. You hold them to task?
Well, it's accountability, and accountability is really, it's really the thing, because what I'm seeing is really interesting. What I'm seeing, I hadn't expected to talk about this.
Oh.
I want to get into a couple of things. There's some testimony that folks have an opportunity to give this week about informed consent. The state is engaged in, the Department of Health is engaged in public hearings over the new mandatory vaccine requirements that are being proscribed. They're being suggested by the federal government and accepted with no discussion by the Department of Health.
Well, that's hard for me to even believe.
It's astounding. The public has absolutely no input into no decision-making power whatsoever. The power lies directly with the Department of Health, and they have the opportunity to the federal government makes their recommendations based on all of their panels and all of their whole, corporate influenced system. The Center for Disease Studies itself owns the patents for many of the vaccines. And so they are driving an entire process, and here every state has to do their thing and accept their own rules. And here in Hawaii, the Department of Health has been empowered to make that decision on behalf of the entire state with no input other than the people that work at the Department of Health.
I'm sure that Lauren Pang is there, yes? Has he opened his...
He's like, people people have the right to informed consent. That's, the response that, he's like, yeah, this is...
Why is that? I can't even imagine there would be any question about that. There's no one here that's stepping up? I guess you're stepping up.
Well, no, there is. And I have to plug in my computer.
Oh, yeah. We'll give you a minute so you can just relax.
To bring that up. But and we'll get to all that. So I was teasing all of that. We'll get to it as soon as I can.
You gotta stay tuned.
At a break, you're going to give me a chance to get my computer set up. But in the meantime, right. I want to. I don't
see our little monitor here. So put my glasses on. Go ahead.
In the meantime, we started to talk about this phenomenon that I'm seeing in the activist community. It's a bizarre thing.
Okay.
I call them the Donald Rumsfeld activists.
Ooh, that's a heavy label.
Because it's a heavy thing. What I've experienced on the part of a number of different people in the community who do stuff, who have, different organizations and whatnot, and have a voice in influencing certain issues in the community, be it political or social activism. And what that's about, Donald Rumsfeld, after 9/11, went on in a television interview, I don't remember where it was, said, the American public wants us. They don't want to know the specifics. They don't want it rubbed in their face. But the American public wants to know that we are, torturing people, that we're lying. And it's okay if we torture people and lie and manipulate the system in every way that we can, because we're doing it for you. And that wow. I'm the guy. I'm enough of a martyr to be willing to accept that responsibility.
That's what he said.
That's what he said. Well, the martyr part, I don't think he copped to being to the martyr. That's my label that I'm putting on him.
Okay.
All right. Because what
But he was taking responsibility for all that.
I'm that guy.
And ending it right there.
I'm taking. You can sleep well at night because I'm doing dirty stuff for you, for your benefit, to move forward our cause, the American whatever. I'm protecting you. And there are folks in our community who do apply that same mindset to the political activism that they're engaged with here locally.
So any means to the end.
And what that opens the door for is for this particular pathology. It's a psychological pathology. It's a mindset. It's a form of narcissism, actually. There's this absolute refusal to accept personal responsibility for anything that's gone south, anything that hasn't worked out in the process. If you're engaged in a process, some things work, some things don't work. The things that don't work, however, never their fault. Never, ever their fault. Mm-hmm. And they will, and the practice, the ongoing practice, is when they talk about what went on, they rewrite history. They reframe everything in a way that shields them from any accountability. That's why we're talking about this, because it's about the accountability. They shield themselves from any accountability. And they will reframe stuff to say, oh, well, we never, really intended, to do that. Whatever it is that they're recharacterizing, they're reframing, they're telling stories in their head that they themselves believe. And they reframe that history in a way that protects them. And then if new people, get engaged, because they burn people out, people walk, eventually people walk away from them because ultimately they see this conflict.
I don't want to compare it to Trump, but it sure sounds like what's going on at a national level there. Here, with a totally different ideology, they're adopting the same, what do we call it, technique? It's not even...
It's a set of behaviors, yes. Yeah. It's a set of behaviors, yeah.
That's sad.
And then they tell half-truths.
So the people keep coming through and going? And
new people come in and they tell them half-truths. And so the new people never get the full story. And so they're charismatic. So they're able to move, some stuff forward by their charisma. But part of the whole that's there, the problem is that because they're basically, they're in this delusion, this self, they're in a bubble. They're in their own bubble, and they believe. They reframe this history and they convince themselves that that's the true history. When it's not. But they've convinced themselves. So for them, everything's okay, and they're totally justified. They sleep at night. They're totally justified in doing what they do.
And obviously we're not getting into specifics here, but do you want to?
Do
you think that it's important that we should, or just to have people be aware of more scrutiny of all the things they're getting involved with?
Well, it's... I've been, it's been a challenge. I was involved in, local politics in 2014 with the Shaka movement.
Right.
And there was a transition that took place after the election with regard to control of the Shaka movement. And that's not a publicly known process. What went on there is not widely known. And I do believe that the community deserves an understanding of what took place after 2014. And after we as a community, truly as a community, we manifested a miracle here in Maui.
Yeah.
And there was a tremendous amount of value that was generated with that community energy. And I was a big part of that. I was the media director for the Shaka movement, and I was absolutely proud, to be and joyful to be able to go up against Monsanto, when there was this great moment when the KITV News covered the first media event that Monsanto, that A&B staged. We as a community delivered our signatures. We had an event on the lawn in front of the county building, and we delivered our first round of signatures to be able to, for the first time in history, get a ballot, a public initiative like California's propositions. We got a proposition on the ballot here in Maui County for the first time in history. It had been tried before, nobody ever got enough signatures. So now we were on the path to having enough signatures.
Right.
So Monsanto staged an event on the lawn the next day, and they had everybody in, T-shirts. They were all wearing, different colored T-shirts of, I forget whether it was A&B or Monsanto directly. And so KITV covered their event. They didn't cover our event. The next day they covered Monsanto's event, and the line that she came up with, the newscaster, she says, the big dogs in marketing are in public relations. The big dogs in public relations are out in Maui County because here's Monsanto staging this event, in reaction to yada yada yada. But that's how they opened the story. The big dogs in public relations are out. And at this point, I am the media director for the Shaka movement. I've been empowered by the entire community organization, the people that created, Bruce Douglas, Joe Marshala, Satya Douglas, that hub. I was the fourth person who got involved in the Shaka movement. Once they had the law written. You
were the media arm.
Somebody had to pay attention to what the messaging was. And that's what I do.
Right. You had a history and background, didn't you?
Professionally, it's what I've done. I did it for Prudential Financial for 8 years. I was the producer, director, and editor of all of their national television commercials, based on interviews that I conducted with real people. Right. And I would craft those into 30-second national television commercials. So I'm well practiced in honing down that message and bringing it down to its essence that it can communicate through mass media to the public.
Yeah, I've seen tremendous results from different things you've done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And it's my joy to be able to do it. And what joy, to be able to do it, in that setting, when she said that, when she said the big dogs are out, I sat back and I smiled and I said, woof. Because I was the big dog. On our side of the equation, I was the public relations arm. I was the public relations company. My company, Small Wonder Video Services, was the production arm being paid, by the Shaka movement to produce a tremendous amount of content. And all of that content people can still see to this day at voteyesmaui.com. Everything that we did.
Voteyesmaui.com. Okay.
Everything that we did during the
Excuse me for seeming distracted.
No.
I can't see
take
time, and this monitor up above is off. I just want to make sure we're
11:19 is.
Oh, we're good. Okay, we got another 8 minutes before we have some station stuff.
Okay.
So that was 2014, and you've been...
Well, directly after 2014, after the November election, oh boy, we were all so burnt out after, it was a shock that we won. Monsanto spent over $12 million, and I think we raised and spent like 86. And a chunk of that, I think I earned for like 18 months of work of my time, full time, way more than full time. And all of my equipment and freelancers helping and stuff, I think they paid me $36,000. I earned $36,000, worth 4 times that.
Sure.
The value that the Shaka organization, the Shaka movement, received from myself and Small Wonder Video Services, which was the most that anybody made. But I'm providing professional services.
I appreciate that.
And hey, I got to make a living.
Right.
I'm not retired. I'm not a rich.
I understand. So you were giving more than 24/7.
Oh God.
To
it was
be
insane.
There for everything.
Well, we all got it.
All.
And all of us got sick. All of us got hurt. I actually lost. I had bronchitis. And, I have a history of, I had 3 neck operations, disc fusion, discs removed from my neck. And because I was working, in these insane hours doing the Shaka movement, I had bronchitis and I didn't tend to myself well enough. And I quite literally coughed myself into additional damage done to a nerve in my neck, and I lost a significant portion of the use of my left hand, and that happened right at the end of that political campaign, and I ended up in surgery on December 12th.
Wow.
To my 4th neck operation. I coughed my way into that trouble, and that was December 12th. On December 23rd, I got a letter from Beth Savitt of the Shaka movement, who had been president. We had Joe, Bruce, and Satya had created this kernel. I jumped on board. Other people came and followed in, and we built a community-based organization, a real grassroots thing. But we needed a structure. And a couple of people stepped forward. Mark Sheehan was already involved. We were able to tap him as one of the 5 citizens. And that whole thing needed a corporate structure, somebody to file the papers and handle the bank accounts and stuff.
Who was that? Mark?
Beth Savitt became the president.
Okay.
And
By the way, we're here on KAKU with Sam Small. I'm Jason Schwartz on the Neutral Zone. Go ahead, Sam.
And so I got this letter on December 23rd, I think it was, 10 days after this spinal cord surgery. I got a letter that informed me that just prior to the November election, that the Shaka board, which had been a silent board, we were running, Joe, Bruce, Satya, and myself, we, in terms of certainly the media, there were other things going on, but in terms of the messaging and what we were communicating to the public, and the strategy of the entire campaign, we were running the campaign. They were running the back office.
I get it.
I get this letter that informs me that as in November, the Shaka board has decided to take it upon themselves to empower themselves to now be active participants in the organization, and that the committees that had been engaged, and I was the chairperson of that committee, of the media production, media content and production. I was the chair of the media production content committee. And that all committees were dissolved, and that the chair people of those committees were informed of this long ago at the time, and that they were going to pursue the legal stuff only. And we weren't going to do, any of the public education stuff that I was doing. As we had a show, Joe Marshala and I had a show here on a Kaku television, a weekly television show, the Shaka Movement TV show, and we were educating the community on all these issues. And that community education process was supposed to, that was the agreement, that community education initiative would continue after the election. And they chose to go a different path. That's the kindest words that I've been able to find in it. And I continued on doing that. That's when I created Maui Causes. And they didn't want any of the, it was bizarre to me because they didn't want any of the assets that we had created in creating the Shaka movement. You know, they were, you know, I got instructions to shut down the Facebook page. You know, and it's like, well,
that's pretty strange.
It was nuts, and
I thought that was the beginning of the movement. After getting a win in the election, you'd think that's when you'd start to really reach out into the community further.
We were supposed to gear that up, but that was too complicated, and apparently they didn't want to work with me. Which is fine. I don't, you know, it's like,
okay.
You know, they pushed everybody out. They pushed Joe Marshala out. They pushed Bruce and Satya Douglas out, and they pushed me out as well. We were all homeless. We were all cast aside, and they took that organization and essentially turned it into their own private hobby. You know, and have done what they wanted to do with the Shaka movement, the thing that we all created as a community. You know, all of the events.
So there's really no
energy.
continuity between then and now?
That's correct.
Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct. That is absolutely
correct. The name
correct.
Shaka's there. It's like the Beatles with all kinds of different people than the ones we knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is not, today's Shaka movement is absolutely not the same organization that won the campaign here on Maui. And yet, they have the nerve to take credit for it.
And do they have any kind of public image now that we really understand?
Oh, sure. There's you know, the Shaka movement is still persisting, and that's also and that's also the SAFE, the Shaka Action Fund for the Environment. So Mark Sheehan's entire political 50C4 super PAC, I created that. I turned all of the, you know, we were looking to build that and continue that on, you know, as part of the Shaka movement. And when I was asked, you know, when I was shut out of the Shaka movement, I was asked to give them, you know, those assets they wanted. And I gave it to them.
We're going to take a break here for a few minutes, Sam, and then we'll come back, give you a chance to set up a computer.
Yeah, because let's talk about vaccines.
We'll talk about that. Thank you for giving us. We'll pick that subject up here in a minute.
You know, it's so deep, and you know, it's been such a challenge to be living with this deception because it's affected me personally, and I see it affecting the community in lots of ways.
We'll get to that when we get back. Let me get to the commercials. The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank No Ka'oi Motors Maui Car Rentals for their support. Located at 181 Dairy Road across from the fire station in Kaului, they've served the Maui community for more than 30 years with services in used cars and automobile rentals. Find them online at mauicarrentals.net or at 877-3300. The Neutral Zone is heard Mondays live at 11 a.m. and again on Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM.
So this is Christmas.
I'm Fletcher Tovar.
And I'm Tom Blackburn Rodriguez.
Please join us on Monday night, December 10th, at the historic EO Theater for a free, family-friendly, one-night-only, oh no, Christmas celebration.
The Maui On Stage program begins at 6:30 with doors opening at 6:15 and will consist of Christmas songs performed by Maui Madrigal, a reading of Truman Capote's A Christmas Memory performed by Paul James Brown, followed by Rick Schneiderman with his outstanding presentation of the Dylan Thomas poem A Child's Christmas in Wales.
Before the show, the Friends of the Children's Justice Center will be collecting unwrapped Christmas toys for older children who have been victims of abuse.
Your unwrapped toy donation is gratefully accepted but not required for admission to the EO Theater on Monday night, December 10th. Doors open at 6:15. Open seating, no tickets or reservation required.
Produced by the Maui Breakfast Club and Tom Blackburn Rodriguez and Associates.
Saturday night at 8 and Sunday night at 9 on KAKU 88.5 FM, we experience dead air. Not that kind of dead air. We're talking Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead music for an entire hour. Saturday night at 8 and Sunday night at 9 with me, Corey Daniels, on KAKU 88.5 FM.
Hi, I'm Vince Fodi, co-host of the Biscuits and Gravy Show. KAKU is a listener-supported station. This means that all of the great programs you hear, like mine, are supported by you as well as our underwriters. If you would like to help keep the voice of Maui talking loud and clear, go to kakufm.org/donate today and give. And don't miss the Biscuits and Gravy Show, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. on 88.5 FM, the voice of gravy.
Well, here we are. We're back on the Neutral Zone with Sam Small. Sam is the chief cook and bottle washer and everything for Maui Causes. And we were talking about the post-2014, I don't want to call it condition, direction.
What was a transition?
Transition of the Shaka movement and all that came on. And then there was another election in the middle, and then there was 2018, and we got a real shift, perceived shift in the mental attitude, I guess, the direction of the people on Maui County Council. Would that be what you see?
I'm hopeful that that's the case, and I am also very hopeful that that extends into the mayor's office. I have great anticipation of this afternoon. At 4 o'clock, Mike Victorino is going to announce his choices for directors, and I think that will show a tremendous indication on the part of the administration what direction they're going to go in. The county council members, we got, there's consolidated. Consolidated's the wrong word. There is a majority now of council members, 5 council members, that seem to have an open mind and a willingness to facilitate change in the existing system. And
how prepared they are and what can they do with that attitude is yet to be seen.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do you take that philosophy?
They don't my experience of the council members is that they don't communicate much with each other. Historically, and I don't know that they're doing much of it now. Even the new folks that are coming on, they're all, it seems, creating their own organizations and their own energy around their seat on the council, and there's not a lot of coordination. Now, Kelly King actually asked for that. She put out a call and said, I had her on the Maui Causes show, and I've posted that subclip from that show on Maui Causes of Kelly King asking the council members, please don't make any front door deals. Do not be discussing up front who is going to be the council chair. Let's please all come in on January 2nd with a completely clean slate. No preconceptions.
But I always want to, when you see people campaigning, they campaign for all kinds of issues that are important to them and the community. But then the question is, so now what are you going to do with it?
Well, there's lots of speculation as to who would go to what chair positions. When it comes down to how does the council divvy up its power, first there's the chairperson, and the chairperson, is really supposed to be a facilitator of Robert's Rules of Order, and the chairperson, it's not a president. This is not a corporation, and you're not the president of the county council, so your personal agenda is not supposed to be involved with your chair position. As the chair position, your job is to facilitate through council services what the different committees need.
Got it.
You're a manager, and it's not supposed to be politically driven.
Well, just like Joe Marshala, let's say, and Bruce and whoever drafted the Shaka thing. Are there any kind of things that are being created? I don't know. I haven't spoken to any of the council people about things that they think they can create that would make a shift
Well, I don't, I've had a lot of conversations with some of the council members, and some of the new council members historically, and I've downloaded to them as much of what my understanding of some of this is, and the amazing assets that we have in this community that have been buried over the years. We've had people in our community who have the knowledge and understanding of, for instance, how public works as a department is supposed to work, how the rest of the civilized world runs their municipalities. There are standards and practices, there are best practices on how a municipality is supposed to conduct itself as an organization, as a business. This is an $800 million business, Maui County, and it needs to be managed in an appropriate way. And we're not currently. We haven't been in forever. And that's totally evidenced in the council, that our charter gives the county council, the power to launch an investigation into any issue that comes before the county. They have never once in the history of Maui County initiated an investigation. And this goes back to where we started, accountability. There is no accountability in the County of Maui administration.
Is it going to be any better with the council approving directors? I don't know. I don't know if the county council has enough knowledge of who's there and what these people are. I mean, I wonder.
I tend to agree with you, and that's why I've been focusing. That's why I've been focusing on educating Mike Victorino as much as I can.
Okay, have you've spoken to him after the election? Then
I have.
Okay,
I have, and
I've tried,
and like I say, with great anticipation, will we see this afternoon?
Yeah.
Of who his directors are, because I think that will tell us a lot. If he carries over some of the people that have been there in public works, in corporation council, in planning, if those people are carried over, then we got some issues. But by all indications, there appears to be a willingness to make the hard decisions and hard choices to solve these ongoing, really deep-seated issues in Maui County. Where, and it goes, for instance, the Office of Corp Counsel. So, it's like the injection wells. The injection wells are a great example of it. Palama Drive is a great example of it. Those are bad decisions that were made by county directors. And they ended up in lawsuits. And rather than acknowledge the bad decision, because there is zero accountability here in Maui County, Corporation Council takes it upon themselves to defend the faulty decisions. And so we end up spending millions of dollars in court and losing. And this practice has been going on for decades.
Right.
And I truly believe that Mike understands this. He has, as a council member, I believe that he has received the same kind of intimidation that all the other council members receive from Corporation Council, where they're pulled aside and they're told that if you speak up on issues that cause the county, that undermine our bullshit defense of the county and cause us to lose, if you do something that weakens our position, that will cause the county money, more money. And we're going to hold you responsible for that money. We're not going to back you if you don't do what we say. we're not going to defend you in court. We're going to defend the directors who make faulty decisions. But if you, council members, speak out about it, we're not going to defend you, and we're going to hold you responsible for the additional costs, and that is reason for dismissal under the charter.
So they were threatening. So we're hoping to see some changes.
All of that can go away.
All right.
If Mike is who Mike seems to be, if he is that guy who wants, really what's right for Maui County, and he doesn't, hey, thank God, look at his son. I mean, he raised a great son. And the family has, they have no financial. They're not worried about their finances now. I lived in New York City for many years, and we had a billionaire. Mike Bloomberg was the mayor of New York City, and I didn't like everything that he did, but I really appreciated that I knew that guy could not be bought. He didn't need that.
Well, how come we have another guy that can't be bought sitting in Washington? I just saw 62% of Trump's staff there's been a turnover percent. What kind of craziness?
Oh, this is the pathology. But
he's a guy that you'd think couldn't be bought. What's the brain isn't connected there? Bloomberg, I still like Bloomberg.
Well, that's the difference. This is the difference. Because the ones that come to that place because of their charisma and narcissism do a shitty job. Because they believe their own BS, and they don't do their homework. And they don't really care, because they don't have empathy. That's one of the things that a narcissist lacks, is empathy.
Mike Bloomberg wasn't that way.
Mike Bloomberg was not that way, and I believe that Mike Victorino is not that way.
Right. So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. That's really encouraging. Then if we have, because there's legislation. There was legislation that was delivered to the solutions are in hand. There's legislation that was written in 2011 and given to infrastructure, given to Ellie Cochran's office, was engaged in writing legislation to solve a lot of the loopholes that are in our land development system. These chasms of permitting process where planning and public works don't communicate with one another. And a developer is able to work through the system and fall through the cracks. If you know how, you can fall through the cracks. And if you commit fraud, you can easily fall through the cracks, because you can get yourself an SMA minor permit instead of an SMA major permit because you paid a civil engineer enough money to illegally put his stamp on falsified numbers. And then you go under the radar on a project that should have public scrutiny, on a project that should have conditions put on it to protect the shoreline. And often these are $14 million shoreline homes, in that whole range of 3-lot or less. These are small, large money, small projects.
So what I'm saying, here we now have a new council with a new leaning direction. Are there any, I hope that they have, well, I guess with each of them are going to be somehow introducing something to help make that system better. I don't know.
I'm hoping that on a whole slew of these issues, I'm actually hoping that Mike is the source of the new legislation, that he will be able to come forward and draw on this tremendous amount of resources that have been developed by a guy on the West Side. Chris Salem has done a phenomenal work on behalf of the county for decades. And submitted, help write this legislation that was offered to the council in 2011 and killed. It was taken away from infrastructure, and Ellie let it go without a peep, and it was given to Don Couch. And Don Couch simply said, well, Corporation Council, this is legislation that was already vetted by Council Services. And in fact, Council Services went out of their way to say that this is excellently written legislation. Council Services said this is excellently written legislation. But Pat Wong simply told Don Couch that It's not legal. And Don Couch killed it.
I see.
And so those solutions still exist. And I'm hoping that legislation comes back to the council through the mayor's office this time, not from a council member.
I got you.
And that can be the beginning of bringing Maui County into a modern municipality with appropriate levels of transparency and the thing that we've never, ever, ever, ever had before, accountability.
Well, we shall see here coming up soon. What I like to bring up, it's sort of my passion. It may sound funny. Government is government. I think of it like electricians and plumbers. There's a system here, and it needs to be working like the rest of the world and functioning, so we have all these things. But many of our solutions, a lot of people think the government is going to solve the housing problem. The government is going to solve these problems, when in fact, the government doesn't have resources to be addressing that.
The government has a responsibility to set things up in an appropriate way,
so that the private sector
seed what can be appropriately seeded, and then get out of the way.
Well, the get out of the way part, I get, but I think the public needs to understand more.
It does on all of these issues. My God, that's why we do this, Jason.
Yeah.
I mean, you do it, I do it, because we know that.
But I want the public to understand their portion, because there are people in our community that are private sector that could move on these. You know that they could move on the housing thing. These guys own the land. This people move the land.
One of the problems,
this one has the bank.
One of the problems that needs to be solved, and the solutions exist, and it impacts what you're talking about directly, is that this county has no organized standards.
Okay.
If a developer comes forward and wants to do something here in Maui County, they come and they what do we have to do? What terms and conditions do you?
Sure.
And the answer here is, well, let's see what you got, and then we'll figure something out.
I see.
And there's a reason for that, because that's the open door to corruption.
I was going to say, that's if there are no standards and nowhere to aim for, everything has to be personally
Everything is
decided.
at the discretion of the director.
Yeah.
And planning, came forward with new rules. They're trying to slam through new rules before the end of this administration, for planning. And it's completely inappropriate. As a process, it's completely inappropriate. There's not enough scrutiny being made to it, and too many of the things that they are asking for increase the discretion of the director, and that's wrong. There's other things that have solutions that are readily available to it. In 2016, we voted for a charter amendment to empower the county council to have a legal opinion that does not come from Pat Wong, that does not come from Corporation Counsel. We as citizens all voted for that, and in 2 years, Corporation Counsel has not allowed it to happen. The county council has not been able to get a legal opinion that does not come from Corporation Counsel.
Even though we voted in that.
Even though we voted in that into place, they have been able to stifle that process. And not only Corporation Counsel, very few people know, Corporation Counsel and the mayor are all being sued personally in federal court. They're all named as individuals in federal court on these infrastructure manipulations, on permit violations, on, even to the extent of what I see as, I look at the documents. I've looked at a tremendous amount of time goes into reading these documents. I've looked at these documents. I've read this stuff. These people have manufactured false public documents. That is like a federal offense. That's like a felony. That's what, there is this level of racketeering that is taking place here. That is, maybe that's what goes on at the federal level. Maybe that's what goes on in other communities here as well. But here in Maui, we got the benefit of having this really, really small community. And you can't hide. And people like Chris Salem are not going away. People like myself, we're not going away.
Right.
We have, we've got the documents. We can show all of this stuff. And there is this massive conflict. If there are a whole slew of issues, important issues, that in executive session in the Maui Council, there is absolutely no place for Pat Wong to be in that room, in those discussions whatsoever, because he's already conflicted, because he's named in federal lawsuits for doing that stuff. That's where people went to jail in Watergate. The lawyers went to jail, the lawyers who worked for the federal government, who paid themselves. They took their wages, and what they were engaged in was defending themselves in court for what they had done.
I see.
For faulty documents that they had filed. And those are the people that went to jail.
So we're going to hear some of this stuff after the change in regime. I imagine we'll see some of it.
Some of it,
Sure.
there's ways that a lot of it, can go away. A lot of it can be fixed. Really simply too. And we'll see, this afternoon who the picks
I
are.
am so happy to know there are people like you and Chris Salem and others who are out there really scrutinizing what's going on. Because as public, I don't think that we have really any clue.
No, people don't. They want, all of the consultants that came in to Maui County for this election cycle, they all told all of the candidates, avoid issues. Just find yourself a couple of catchphrases and stay with those catchphrases. Let it be a popularity contest. And that turns my stomach.
Of course.
Because it's that popularity contest that allows candidates who thrive in this charismatic, ill-informed place, who don't do their homework, who do rewrite history. It empowers those people to do their thing. And how are you ever going to get to the result that we want, that we really deserve here in Maui County, by lying? It's extraordinary to me. The only organizations in this past election cycle that went negative in their advertising, that attacked other candidates, were the progressive organizations. I call them the fake progressive organizations. Those are the Donald Rumsfeld activists. They rewrite history. They reframe it and make it okay for a progressive organization to be running negative advertisements about another candidate. Nobody else in this local election process did that, other than the Center for Food Safety, SAFE, with Sheehan and even there's a whole story in the Pono Network. I had to walk away from creating the Pono Network because they did the same thing as was done with Shaka. Maybe they were inspired, but we created an organization telling the community that we were going to build something like the Farmers Union. That's a membership organization. That's the mistake that we made back in Shaka in the beginning. We allowed Beth Savitt to write the bylaws, and it didn't become a membership organization. In the Farmers Union, the membership once a year has the opportunity. The board is dissolved. The board loses complete power. The authority goes fully over to the members, and the members establish a new board. Well, that doesn't take place with Shaka. And the Maui Pono Network ended up in the same place because Bruce Douglas and Paul DeLoria took that organization and registered it as a standard PAC, a political action committee. And we told the community that it was going to be a grassroots membership organization, and it's not. So they took the same thing. They took this community energy and they consolidated it into something that only they have control over.
Well, let me say, because I think it's important for me to say, no matter what they did, we have the people that they backed, I liked a lot of the people that they backed. And I don't think that any of the people that are candidates or have taken the seats should feel, many people will want to bunch them all together because they were under a Pono or someone all endorsed them. They're all individuals, and I hope that they each establish their own personal integrity and direction.
Well, that's, you know, it's finding that level of integrity. That's really the challenge.
Well, we got 3 minutes to go.
Yeah, we started. No, we've got to move on to the vaccines. Look, folks, on Friday this week, December 14th, from 2 to 4 p.m. At the Wailuku State Building, 54 South High Street. This is at the Department of Health. They are having hearings on proposed rule changes to include new vaccine requirements that mandate vaccines for Hawaii school-attending children.
That's Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. We need to crowd those rooms. We need to overpower their process with our process and assert your rights for informed consent. They are the federal vaccination program was deregulated by Ronald Reagan the same way as the nuclear industry was deregulated, and the people who manufacture biologics. Vaccines are not pharmaceuticals. Vaccines are biologics. They're in a unique category. And the companies that manufacture and distribute biologics were exempted by Ronald Reagan from any liability. It's the same thing with the nuclear industry. If they actually blow the place up, we can't hold them responsible. Same thing with vaccines. They can push and force vaccines on your kid, do harm to your kid, and no one is held responsible. I hope everyone's hearing that loudly. So Friday, 54 High Street, that's at the corner there.
2 to 4 p.m.
Wailuku, 2 to 4 p.m.
At the Department of Health.
Thank you for being with our show. You know, I would like to see you coming back regularly and kind of checking in with us. You have your own show, but you're always welcome here.
Thank you, Jason.
Your 2 cents and your 3 cents are welcome. I don't have a counter, so I don't know how close we are to the last second.
My thing says 11:56.
And how many seconds?
That I don't.
That I don't know either. So we're going to kind of wrap it up. Sam Small and Jason Schwartz are here on the Neutral Zone, 88.5 FM.
You can go to MauiCauses.org and look for us on Akaku's. We air Mondays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 7 p.m.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you again here next week, or check out on the net, MauiNeutralZone.com.